I will ask Devi to give a rundown on this one. This one should be more
Thank you.
straightforward, I think.
For some.
So, yeah.
Always the optimist.
Yeah, I know.
Oh. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, and briefly. So an elected, similar to the standing orders, the elected members' code of conduct is another foundation document that must be in place. It, again, doesn't necessarily need to be reviewed, amended or replaced with each triennium, but that's over to a new council, or it can happen during the term if need be. But again, in a similar fashion to the standing orders, this is another document which, because while councils have small differences, there are things that can be very similar across what is expected of certain groups. And so it's useful for that umbrella organisation, Local Government New Zealand, to think about feedback that they've had, things that they've experienced over the 3 years, and develop that into an updated model template. So that's what they've done again for 2019 for the Code of Conduct. There have been some tweaks along the way. Primarily, there's a little bit more specific comment around social media this time round, so just making it a little bit more contemporary, I suppose. But other than that, and just speaking to what a code of conduct is, so this is the agreement that you as elected members come to between yourselves, and that you tell us about as to how you will behave amongst yourselves, with staff, with the public, with the media. It does touch specifically on the media. How you will behave, be seen to engage in your role as elected members, and if it's believed that someone's not pulling their weight in a particular way that's been agreed under the code, what do you do then? And so the code outlines some instances there. Part of the decision making that aligns with the code of conduct itself is in that instance, and we hope that we don't get there, but where it may be felt that someone hasn't quite got things right under the code, who do we get to look into that? So a council needs to agree what's referred to as a list of independent investigators. Napier City Council has used or has had ready to use, if required, a list of independent investigators that's held by Equip. So Equip is one arm of Local Government New Zealand. It means that the investigators are usually outside of Hawke's Bay, so they're completely independent even of the issues, potentially. They are very well versed in matters relating to investigations of these types, which can be low level through to higher level, obviously, depending on the matter at hand. More often than not, they've also got extensive local government experience, so they really understand the context. Some of whom have actually been elected members themselves, so they get what it's like being in your position, and so they can weigh things up and look into matters from a really clear point of view. So from our perspective, I suppose we would encourage consideration of continuing that arrangement, alongside the code itself. In terms of the code of conduct, as mentioned, so Local Government New Zealand has updated its model template, and at this point, the general indication that we've had from Council is that there are no tweaks to be made to the model template, and so unless there's anything that comes up in discussion today, that will be considered as it is.
Thank you very much, and thank you for raising the issue of the list of independent investigators. I certainly am happy to support the continued utilisation of the Equip list, so I would like to propose that for today's discussion. with regards to the code of conduct itself, I'm very happy with the recommendation to use the standard template that has been recently released from Local Government New Zealand. I'm pleased to see the addition of the social media area, because obviously that is a way that many of us now engage with our community on a regular basis. So having some guidelines around what's appropriate behaviour for that, I think, is vital. And in terms of the general interaction with media as well, I do like clause 6 in here, which does make it quite clear that members are free to express a personal view to the media at any time. However, those comments must be consistent with the code. The comments must not purposefully misrepresent the views of the council as a whole or of other members. And I think that just provides some clarity in terms of when a councillor is expressing a personal view, which they are well within their rights to do, just, you know, providing the guidelines as to how they can do that in a respectful way. So is there any questions of Debbie or any other comments anyone would like to make, or suggested changes potentially to the code of conduct?
Could I just, as you've raised 6 media, social media, just for clarification, in the last part, members are free to express a personal view to the media or social media at any time, provided the following rules are observed. And we go to the second bullet point: comments must not purposefully misrepresent the views of the council or the views of other members. So if a decision has been made, and we've talked about these decisions, and a resolution has been passed, that in my mind is the view of the council. So an elected member could not then speak from a personal point of view of what their decision was, because it did not represent the view of the council.
They could,
The way I would see that is that you can still say that you support the majority in the council decision. However, in your personal view, you still did not. That would be the way I would see that works.
I think they would need to be very clear where there's a difference in those two views, very clear that one is personal and one is the decision of council, and probably it's probably worth saying, this is my personal view, this is the decision of council, this is what we're running with. So specifying that the decision of council is the one that's moving ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Right.
it's really important that people don't go out once we've made a decision and undermine it. And so somehow we need some understanding or written words around that, because that's what causes fraction in councils and undermines public confidence in councils, is when a council makes a decision and then a group of councillors go out and undermine that decision. So I'd be happy if there was a little bit more, it was a bit tighter around that.
Councillor
Myself.
Mawson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I think with what we've talked about previously with the voting recorded, I think that it's if you've got an opinion, you've already made it, people can then investigate that. I think that the case of this happening a little bit more or a little bit less, the chance that it's going to happen a lot less now than it did before. That's my feeling on that.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, I think it's important that councillors do retain their opinion to justify their reasons, because if a reporter comes up to you and say, why did you vote against that? You can't say, well, that's irrelevant because the majority's made its decision. You should be able to say your bit. And I just think that's good democracy.
And I think, again, having that real clarity around explaining the difference between supporting a council decision, because that is the way that our processes work and that is what is specified within our code of conduct, as opposed to still retaining the ability to have a personal view. I don't think we can expect to take away councillors' rights to have a personal view and then just being respectful of the way that that is communicated in light of a majority decision being made. And yeah.
Okay, so how are you going to police that? Because there is a line, and when it's crossed, is there something in there that means that we can approach that person and tell them to tone it down or not?
I think Section 6 does cover it, yes. I'm confident and bearing in mind that this, again, is the national template that Local Government New Zealand has produced. We're not making any changes. We're actually adopting what they have researched and prepared on behalf of councils all around the country. Councillor McGrath.
And again, we've got to be very careful because council made a decision on Easter trading, for example, and the court told us we got it wrong. We can't all stand up as a council and say to the court, I'm sorry, we've made our decision. So we have to have options and different ways of being able to do things. So we've got to be careful we don't tie ourselves too much into a corner here.
Councillor Bogue.
I think when people ask us why did we vote against what the majority voted for or whatever, you could refer them to the video streaming, to the actual debate and the minutes, which are very comprehensive for your reasons. So if they want to know how you actually put your case against what the majority wanted, it's all there in the public record. I'm not saying don't say any more, but it is there, and you can't hide it. You can't pretend that everybody, was in favour of what the majority voted. So there's a few options there in terms of sharing how you feel about things, or you did at the time.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that in regards to posts on social media and answering questions around why you may have voted against something that was then disagreed with essentially by the majority of council. When making posts like that, the section does refer you back to must be consistent with the code, and the code and its purpose is to promote effective decision making and community engagement, enhance the effectiveness of the local authority, and to enhance the credibility of and accountability of us. So if you're out there making comments that undermine the credibility of council or are not enhancing the effectiveness of our decision making, then that in itself, under this wording that's already in there, would be a breach of that code. So I think it is, just to satisfy Tanya, I think there is quite a lot in there that maintains, I suppose, the purpose of the code in those comments that you rightly should, as Councillor McGrath said, you rightly should be able to put your personal opinion, but you still need to uphold the code in doing that.
I've got a question around the complaints. So it's quite specific that only a member or the chief executive, so one of us or the chief executive, can make a complaint. What is the public's ability to complain about our behaviour? Is it just that they don't vote us back in? Or
That's another member.
Through the mayor, there is that option. It's a longer term option. There is a separate complaints process which is available to members of the public by which they can raise issues or concerns that they may have with a specific elected member. As it happens, it's relatively similar to what plays out here, and that they would address those through to the mayor primarily in the first instance. But it's not covered in the code because it's covered separately and because the code is specifically for members of the public. But I'm really happy to circulate a copy of that if it would be of interest.
Thank you. There's no further questions. Once again, I'm happy to move the motion for the adoption of the Code of Conduct. If we have a seconder, thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. I've said my piece, so there's nothing further that I wanted to add. If nobody, yeah, excellent. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And our next agenda item is Debbie again. You're going to lose your voice at this rate. So this is actually presenting the correct formal Napier City flag design for adoption, which the way I see it, this is actually addressing a legacy issue and just a tidy up to enable us to be able to sell our flags to our proud community for them to display in their front yards on a flagpole. I've got visions of flags flying everywhere. So, Debbie, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I don't know
further to
that there's much more to add to that. Thank you. Yes, you're quite right. This is addressing a legacy issue. We do currently have a very unusual city flag. Most don't and shouldn't have a full coat of arms on them for a number of reasons, not least because, as the Mayor has pointed out, it restricts the ability of members of our community to engage more formally with the city. We do know that there are some members of the community that would be very keen to be able to engage with the flag and display it. So this essentially creates that opportunity which is not currently available to them. I'm very happy to go into the reasons why, but it is a bit of an information dump. Essentially, I'll keep it brief and do feel free to ask any questions along the way. But essentially, it does come down to the rules around coats of arms. They are granted to an individual or to a municipality, so to the city, and it is important to distinguish the city from the council here that provides governance on behalf of the city. So it has been granted, the coat of arms has been granted to the city, which means that only the city and council on its behalf, essentially as the governors, are able to use the coat of arms. Anyone else who is engaging with the coat of arms must display it, which means that it must be very clear anywhere that it's displayed whose coats of arms it is. Obviously this is very difficult in a large flag because it's not necessarily going to be particularly clear. So there's that issue that currently a member of the public who may wish to cannot purchase a copy of our city flag for themselves because it's currently got the full coat of arms on it. And secondly, as has been pointed out in the report, there was a letter in the mid-90s which clearly outlines what a correct flag would look like anyway, which helps us address that legacy issue, so a coat of arms should never have been on there in the first place. So it would help us correct that issue of formality and heraldry, while also creating an opportunity for our community members to fly their own city flags, should they wish to. So, and there are occasions, obviously, where that level of tradition and formality add a real beauty and finesse. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Wright? And then.
Do we have any idea of what sort of uptake we would have, or numbers-wise? No? Because it seems to me that when you're buying something individually, there's an additional cost. So to assist people to be able to afford or purchase a city flag or encourage it, we could invest in buying a reasonable quantity to drift the price down.
At least
Idea.
13.
At least 13, yeah. There's an Actually, should we add into the code of conduct that you must display the city flag and you can we get the
On my bike.
missed the opportunity.
It just seems to me that if we want to encourage members of the public to have them, we should try and get the best price we can, and maybe buying a bulk number and then putting it out there that they are available would be a smarter way of dealing with it.
And that could be something that could be explored, absolutely. We'd have a chat to the Archives Department about the correct storage in the meantime, so that we're meeting our requirements under that, but yeah.
Councillor Crystal.
I've noticed, being a farmer's daughter, that the two sheep are different. So,
Oh,
so why have they changed the picture? They've changed the sheep.
Looks like a wolf in sheep's clothes.
Yeah,
They changed the flowers too.
yeah. So is the picture at the bottom
an
what it's going to
old-fashioned
be, or is that just a mock-up?
At this point, it's a mock-up based on
Okay.
the shield. We do have, and this was very exciting for someone who has slowly over the years embraced their geekhood,
Yeah.
but in the archive folders, we do actually have the original onion skin drawings of the coats of arms from a very long time ago. So we will be able to refer the print designer and maker to the original design of the shield, so that that can be reflected. Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Brosnan, then Tapani, then Bogue.
Debbie, you and I conversed this at pre-agenda, and I wonder, for the benefit of council and possibly the community, I asked the question, there may be a misconception that council is designing this flag, that we could have gone out, for instance, and put a nice Pahuj kawa tree or a Norfolk pine or something on it and called that the city flag.
Yeah.
And you ran me through some very good reasons why, in terms of heraldic history, that was not appropriate, as well as legislatively. There's some requirements in there around the coat of arms, and I wonder if you wouldn't mind doing that again for me and for us.
Certainly. I agree, a golden fleece is a very unusual part in a modern day flag. As you've mentioned, so this isn't a process of council designing a flag. So we haven't gone off and said, we'd like these because we think it would look okay. Can you put it together in a flag that we can bring through to the elected members and pass it? In fact, I have it here with me today. We have the letter from the mid-1990s, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure as to the reason that this matter was brought up at that time. But there is communication from the New Zealand Herald at Arms Extraordinary to Her Majesty the Queen at the time, who is the representative in New Zealand of Her Majesty's College of Arms, which is primarily based in London and England. And the communication is in relation to the Napier City flag, and it's having the full coat of arms at the time. So comments briefly on that, but then moves into a comment on what the city flag should look like. And again, I do want to distinguish between the city and Napier City Council. Napier City Council can and does have flags with its own branding that it might use for its own events. You'll see the teardrop flags, for example, around. And that is about council. This is about the coat of arms that has been granted to the city, Napier City, and the correct presentation of a part of that coat of arms, which is taken directly from the shield, based on heraldic tradition, which then becomes the formal city flag. So there is a distinction there. And so there's been very clear direction that the city's flag should be the shield design bled out into a square and oblong. The full coat of arms should not be included on a flag. And again, the best example of a heraldic flag is the Royal Standard, so the shield design of the Royal Coat of Arms bled out into an oblong. So that's why we've included those two as examples, so you can see that this is standard practice and has been for a very long time. That the elements within the shield of a coat of arms are what are extended out, or the word is bled out, into a square and oblong, so that is the formal city flag. So as you've pointed out, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, this is a matter of, and the Mayor in fact in starting, this is a matter of correcting a legacy issue around the formal presentation of a city flag as opposed to designing something around branding.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Tapani, I believe I'd earmarked you as next.
Yes, I'll forego the question, the discussion, because actually that was pretty close to what I was asking.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Bogue?
Yes, could I just share a couple of letters that were in the paper today for those of you who get it? One from a gentleman who thinks it's a waste of our time even discussing it, that we should be getting on with things that really matter, so this is inappropriate. Surely elected councillors have better things to do than change things that have no effect on the lives of their electors. This is why I think this discussion is important. However, Alan Hashir wrote this letter, if you will bear with me, it's not very long. Flags spark pride. Read the Napier City Council flag, or Napier City flag. Last year I wrote to the Napier City Council asking why the Napier City flag was not being flown at council buildings and on special occasions such as Art Deco weeks. I also asked where I could buy the flag and display it from home. Other cities such as Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch have city flags that are available for the public to purchase from flag shops. Flags paraded and flown add to the occasion and spark a feeling of pride in one's city and country. I was very pleased to read today that the council have addressed the situation and now has a recently designed flag approved by the Ministry of Culture and Heritage. I hope the councillors vote on Thursday to adopt the City of Napier heraldic flag, which would allow citizens to purchase and display it. So there's obviously one person out there who's really keen for us to go ahead with
Might
this,
have
and
to
I
have a
think
casting
good
vote.
reasons.
There's one either way.
And I'll just point out that, excuse me, through Madam Mayor, he did get it wrong and said that we designed it.
Oh well, everything else was all right.
Right.
Madam
Councillor Simpson.
Mayor, the question I have is, when would we use the flag? I thought I was reasonably observant, but obviously I have been, because I haven't seen the flag being flying in the past, so obviously I don't feel I've missed out on anything at the moment. But my question is, so we've got a flag, what are we going to do with it? How often are we going to use it? What are we going to use it for? So let's have a purpose around it so that it's actually a useful outcome. Yeah.
I'm happy to speak to that through you, Madam Mayor. Our circumstances over the last couple of years have changed in having to move away from our civic building. So when we were in that complex, the flag was consistently flown. So where to in the future in terms of our own administrative buildings has yet to obviously be decided. But it is at least possible, if not probable, that there will be a flagpole associated with the ensuing building, and it is reasonable to anticipate that it would be flown there regularly again. Currently there are certain formal events, and I'm thinking of the recent passing, for example, of those on a national or local stage, where half-masting is appropriate or required. There are occasions where half-masting the New Zealand ensign is actually required, and often the city flag would be placed in a similar position, but lower. So those kind of more formal recognition occasions where there was a particular civic event, it may be decided that the city flag would want to be flown also. There are Lance may well correct me here, but I believe there's 5 flagpoles, 5 or 6 flagpoles around the city currently, which would be available for use as required.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Slightly off track with all this publicity around the flag and everyone wanting to put a flag up. Are there some rules around flagpoles that we should just flag early on here as far as consents go and various bits and pieces? Can you just throw a flagpole up and put your new Napier flag on it?
You wanted to respond to that?
Just go to the district plan. I think there are some exemptions around there, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, so we note that as an action. Thank you. Let's not all go rushing out and buy a flagpole quite yet.
From top of the basketball court.
If there's no further questions of Debbie, I'll ask for a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Tafney and Councillor Wright. Councillor Tafney, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Your Worship. So as mentioned earlier by some of our colleagues here, the flag and the article that Councillor Bogue read out, the flag is designed to convey ideas, ambitions and values in a symbolic form. So I acknowledge the history and the connection and the symbolism and the time and the era that is associated with both our coat of arms and the flag as it has been bled out. Heritage and culture are important, and the flag is an extension of heraldic culture and Napier's early formation as a borough and district. How we preserve and protect elements of our culture helps define us as a community. the things that we protect and preserve are part of the values we take forward into the future. The recommendations of the officers to adopt the flag and conclude a conversation from 1990 is both appropriate and the right recommendation to formalise the use and appropriation of the city coat of arms and the flag associated with this history. The emblems are rich with detail and significance, which are representative of an era of our history which is still actively recognised in many ways today, such as our stories to the days of our large factories in wool and meat production, but also our festivals such as the Art Deco. I endorse the importance of maintaining the cultural significance this flag represents and the link it continues to establish to the symbols that represent Napier in an era gone by. I speak in favour of the officer's recommendation with the added note. Acknowledging the importance of the formal role of this emblem, flag and symbology, and the opportunity for Napier City Council to be able to provide a less formal flag, I find I struggle to relate to these emblems, despite how rich and deep their meanings are. They are from a time when they're from a time gone by, and I think that today there is an opportunity for us to have a conversation as a community around what emblems we may want or what emblems we ascribe to in this time and in this era that we might want to include in a flag, perhaps in a less formal role along our branding or whatever that may be. But I think while I seek to preserve the importance of these coat of arms and the flag, I also would hope that we would be looking to have a conversation around our community, around an emblem or symbols that we could rally behind. Because I'm, for one, would love a flag and love a bumper sticker that I can ascribe to that generates pride in my city and my region. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
I just think this is a wonderful opportunity to have a visual symbol of civic pride, and I would hope that this council would use it to its full advantage and among all the other tools that we have to engender civic pride in our community, because it certainly does create community cohesiveness when there is a high level of pride in our community and about our city. Thank you.
Well said. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I will put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And following on from that, we have the emblem and ensign policy, which was not due for review. However, considering the previous agenda item, it was decided this was a good opportunity to actually present this policy for adoption. I will pass over to Debbie again to...
Thank you. I promise you're nearly done with me. As the Mayor has noted, this policy, well actually it replaces and updates a couple of quite old policies that hadn't been due for review, but it was felt that given the conversation was coming up in relation to the flag, that it would be a good idea to look at it as a whole package. So that's why it's been reviewed early and brought through to you today. I'll just touch on a couple of things, if I may. So the policy itself outlines the flags. We had to slightly anticipate, which is always awkward, that you would be okay with the correction of the city flag, but obviously if you hadn't been, or if that had not been passed, then we wouldn't have had to take this paper. So the policy itself, it outlines the coat of arms, the elements of that, the meaning behind it. What we have hoped to achieve with this document is, because it will be publicly available, obviously on our website, in the version that's adopted. So we have wanted to collate some of this historical information into one place so that the public have access to that as well as council. So that's why the inclusion of the information around the coat of arms to start off with, around the emblems, and information in relation to the granting and the use of coats of arms. And then we move into the Napier City Council and Office of the Mayor logos. Again, this is an interesting scenario because the Office of the Mayor includes the coat of arms. It does trigger the same requirements in terms of use and display as our existing city flag. So we've just specified that. There are some things that the Office of the Mayor just needs to be careful around in that. And then the policy, of course, moves into the flags. So we touch on the existing flag, which obviously is not being repealed. It just may not be used as often as it has done in the past. As to where that's come from, the corrected or heraldic flag, and I do need to correct a small typo in point 28 of the policy. That should read the Napier City flag heraldic and not coat of arms. Thank you, Councillor Mawson, for picking that up. So just a minor correction to point 28 of the policy there. My apologies. So there's just some direction as to the appropriate use and half-masting of our more formal flags. And then we touch on our existing Napier City Council branded flag. So that is directly derived from the council branding and is used typically in teardrop shape currently rather than a square or an oblong, but is available in a variety of shapes should council require it. And that, Councillor Tapani, could be where your opportunity to explore some emblems may come in if council want to look at that conversation at any time. That would absolutely be appropriate to explore emblems there. And then because this is intended as colloquially a one-stop shop for information, we've included some brief information around the New Zealand ensign and then moving into the appropriate display and half-masting of flags in general. So that in the event of half-masting being required or desired, that how to do that appropriately is really clear for those that need it to be. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair. So if we've removed the formal crest from the proposed flag or the new version of the flag, do sections 29, where is it? No, is it section 31 and 32? Does that still apply?
Yes. So even yes, they do need to request authorisation from council. Council can, if it so chooses, they can't bypass that, or they could change that, or they can essentially supersede it by saying, we are comfortable with you, rather than coming through to us, we have pre-authorised, as it were, the purchase of this flag, the heraldic flag, so members of the public are able to liaise directly with the printmaker. So you could have, as it were, a pre-authorisation in writing that any members of the public wishing to display that particular flag may do so. So you could incorporate that. But yes, there does need to be an authorisation to display the flag in place. That could take the form of a general pre-authorisation for all members of the public. So we can redraft that to better outline that.
So such an authorisation could be provided to the public when they purchase the flag as a document? i.e. setting out some ground rules around how they could use this flag?
Yes, that's something that we'd have to work through with the designer and printmaker as to whether it will be appropriate for us to produce that and provide it to them to go out with the flag, that's definitely a conversation that we could have as to how to manage that pragmatically. Yeah.
Councillor Tapani, then Councillor Wright.
Through you, Your Worship, just so my question is an extension of, so I just want to endorse Councillor Simpson's comments around one, access of the flag, and two, trying to put in place some measures to protect the integrity of its symbolism. So a flag is typically an item that we will rally around, and I was curious as to why there's a specific mechanism requesting authorisation. Are you or are we aware of the history around the impetus of including the request for authorisation? And that comes from the background of flags, and normally an iconic thing that people seek to protect or to promote. But should I not be a person of average or honourable intent, I might want to take that symbol and use it for less honourable purposes. So is there a reason why there is an authorisation component in there that we are aware of?
To my knowledge, it's linked to the background and the distinction, the background of use and display of a coat of arms. So it comes because the flag, although the flag in question that we're talking about won't be displaying the coat of arms as a whole, it is still presenting the emblems of a coat of arms, which in itself has limitations set around its use. So it's derived from that at all times the person who holds the coat of arms has the right to authorise its use or otherwise by other people. It's not just a sort of carte blanche. So you get to say, no, I don't want you to have it. Yeah.
So, just by extension, I would like to, as Councillor Simpson has mentioned, I would like to hear some feedback from the staff at some stage around the outcome of including a set of guidelines that reinforce the position of the flag before it's distributed wholesale to public.
That's the right.
Once again, if we control the purchase of a reasonable bulk of the flags and people have to come and collect it from us, then we can cover that at the time when they present to get their flag. And I'd suggest that's probably better than letting them go to individually to a printer and getting it themselves.
Agree. Councillor Mawson.
Currently, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through Madam Mayor, currently it would suggest that the member of the public would need to go and see the executive assistant to the chief executive. I feel that could this not be something, if we're going to look at that, also look at what we just talked about, also look at maybe changing that wording to say they could get it from customer services, perhaps. I just think it's probably a utilisation of the PA to the CE. I mean, not assuming thousands of people are going to buy a flag, but I'm just... I would think that if we're going to be able to provide the flag for people, that it wouldn't necessarily be up in the admin block. It might be better suited in community service. Down here. Yeah. Yep, Councillor.
Through the Mayor, if I may, if the option that Councillor Wright has raised, in which it sounded like you were comfortable with, Madam Mayor, of rather than directing members of the public to the printmaker to liaise directly themselves, but purchasing this flag so that they are liaising directly with us as a council, so we have that authorisation and purchase process kept in-house, as it were. Is that something that's of interest? If so, we can certainly adjust the policy to reflect that different scenario.
So long as we're not purchasing thousands of flags and 5 people buy them. No,
I don't believe that we would have the
Thousands.
storage space to
No.
do that among any financial considerations.
My main concern was that the price, through the Mayor, the price of the flag might put people off, and that if we can buy them in reasonable numbers ourselves, it'll drive the price down. More accessible, that's all.
Is it copyright?
Yeah.
Ours, we own it. Yeah.
So is there a level of comfort with us buying a reasonable amount of flags?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think what we'll do, councillors, we'll have a look at what the pricing
Yeah.
is with the way that flags are now printed. Obviously, it's a lot more computerised. The cost actually between 1, 5, 10 is not a great deal, but we'll certainly have a look at it, and if there's an issue around it. We also have an answer to the question regarding flagpoles. Flagpoles under the plan are classified as a structure, and so in a residential area they can go up to 12 metres. I think the bigger issue in regards to flagpoles in residential areas, though, is it's the chattering of the lines. That then becomes an issue around noise.
Thank
So
you.
is that consented at 12 metres or unconsented?
Unconsented up to 12 metres.
And is there any
Up your arm?
distance
Take an
from
inch off.
boundary restrictions or anything like that?
Through you, I think take it with a pinch of salt a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably, it was a very quick text to Paul O'Shaughnessy to see whether it was permitted as such. So it is permitted. There will be various restrictions. Cast your mind back to that basketball hoop business. So there are always nuances with these things. And but generally it is permitted to have it up to 12 metres.
Thank you. Councillor Tapani.
Just one more question, if I might. So, don't own a yard, can't put up a flagpole. Would I be able to use a bumper sticker or an adhesive type? Is there because we're talking about the city emblem, do I have to go through a special process to get a bumper sticker?
Through you, Madam Mayor, you certainly would at this point because they don't exist.
Something for future consideration.
Something for future consideration.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
again,
Accessibility.
yeah, and around the display, if I may use an example from Great Britain, there will be numerous instances where some form of pre-authorisation has taken place. If you've travelled there, there are a number of places that would sell knickknacks and items of memorabilia that have the coats of arms displayed on them. It's always very clear whose coats of arms they are. But there will be authorisation that's been given for the production of those items. Anything in relation to a royal wedding generally has some form of coat of arms displayed on it. So yes, that is absolutely an option that we can look at. And yes, not everybody wants to engage with the more formal emblems in flag format.
Thank you.
Just, it's kind of relative, but just thinking about generating pride in our city, obviously we have a Founders Day for Napier, and if we now have a lovely civic city flag, there's an opportunity for us to do something around that day to start off the process of engendering civic pride. And I'm just telling you that now before it falls out of my head.
No, very good. We'll perhaps note that as something to look to do in the future. Thank you. Councillor Mawson.
Since we've been thank you, Madam Mayor. Since we've been live streamed, I just thought I'd point out to the public that they probably see things every day about coat of arms. For instance, if you buy a certain salt and it has by order Her Majesty the Queen on there, and that's got the coat of arms. Obviously, it's, as you said, they've had authorisation for that. So you sort of see that stuff all the time, but don't really think about it.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Wright, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Brown. Thank you very much. Did you wish to?
Sorry.
I just
We'll just get the mover of the motion the opportunity to speak first.
I think I've said enough, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brown.
I was just going to point out before, from the price point of view, that it's in the notes that about $200 a flag, or 300, just shy of 300
Okay,
for a flag.
thank you.
No, I think it's a great idea, and having a policy that gives us the rules around flag raising. As a Navy officer, I used to say good morning to the Queen every morning at 8 o'clock and bring it down exactly on sunset. So there's some very specific rules and traditions around raising and lowering of flags, and I think it's really cool to have it clear. So.
Councillor Bowe.
I do support the policy, but I just want to tell a little story about the unauthorised use of our logo, and a particular instance I knew about. 3 years ago, there was a group of about 25 local, national, international mural artists here, painting those beautiful, the second lot of those beautiful 50 murals we have around our CBD and Ahuriri on the theme of protecting our marine environment. And one of them was a young man called Pat Perry, who comes from Detroit, is an international artist, and he did that beautiful mural that's on the side of the Willis building behind the Napier Doctors. And after he'd done his mural, he decided he'd treat himself to a tattoo. So he went to a local tattooist, and what he came out with, I don't know where he saw it, but what he did was he had tattooed on the lower part of his leg the graphic part of our Napier City Council logo, with the tree and the water in it. So our logo, without Napier City Council being written on, of course, completely unauthorised, is now travelling around the world with that lovely young man. So obviously, it's a logo that a lot of people have liked the look of, and I think it does us proud. And it certainly symbolises a lot of the positive things about our city.
Thank you for sharing that story, Councillor Bogue. We might have to go do it ourselves. No one's in. Did anyone else wish to speak to the motion? No? Okay, I will therefore put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you. Sorry, if I may, just one last comment through you, Madam Mayor. I have noted the questions raised against point 31 and 32 of the policy. So while they have just been adopted, we will investigate that and bring it back to Council, so you can make some changes or amend that as you will.
Thank you very much, Debbie, and thank you for your presentation of all those papers. Much appreciated. Our next item is the Revenue and Financing Policy Review, which, of course, we've all been involved in the process of the Step 1 analysis of the council activities. Many hours with Caroline.
Any chocolate fish?
All to come.
And many more to come, yes. So thank you, Caroline, for being here to present to the paper today.
So as you are aware, we're currently reviewing the Revenue and Financing Policy. At the completion of it, it will go out for consultation along with the annual plan. We've divided the process into two stages. Step 1 was completed by the previous council, and now we've had a series of 2 workshops for this council to review what the previous council had come up with regards to the funding needs analysis for each activity of council. This council has only made some very minor modifications to that activity summary table, mainly around typos and formatting. So this paper really seeks council approval of the process undertaken to date for stage 1, so that we can then move on to stage 2.
Thank you, Caroline. As said, we have spent many hours on this already, and made some tweaks to the original analysis that was done when we had our new incoming council. And did anyone have any other questions or need any further clarification to the process that we've already undertaken? Well, we have Caroline at our... Yeah, no? Okay, well, if there's no questions, do I have someone who'd like to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Price. Did you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, very briefly, as most of you are aware, the previous council spent, or a number of the members of the previous council, spent many hours going through this consideration with assistance from Caroline and other personnel, and I think we came a long way and learnt a great deal during that process. And so now that has moved further in the new council endorsing minor changes, we've come through stage 1, and I think it's an ideal opportunity that we now move into the next stage, everyone fully versed with how this revenue and financing policy operates. So it's been arduous, but we've got there, and yeah, a few Moro bars, etc., have been distributed for those that came up with the very good answers. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Price, did you wish
Oh, I think Councillor Taylor said it all.
summed it up
I
well?
was a bit disappointed I didn't get many Moro bars, but never mind.
Didn't need them.
Did anyone else wish to speak to the motion? No?
Yes, if
Oh,
you
yes,
wouldn't mind,
Councillor Tapane?
Your Worship. So this is more of a message to our community. This particular policy is a part of a range of tools that Napier City Council will use to determine how we collect revenue and apply that revenue to the betterment of the city and its citizens. And what I'd like to highlight to our citizens is that as they go through, for those that are interested through this review policy, we're now under a new set of pillars. And prior to this policy coming in, the social wellbeing pillar was earlier in local government time, then removed and now brought back in. So for those members of our community who would like to ensure that there's a good balance between the thinking at this table and their expectations around social wellbeing, I would encourage them to have a good look at that rating policy to ensure that this council is in tune with what our community has been telling us.
Thank you, Councillor Tapane. I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 7, Napier City Business Inc. funding consultation, which Gary will come and give us a quick rundown on what Napier City Business Inc. is looking to do. I did see Zoe earlier, but welcome, Zoe.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
So anyone who's not that familiar with Napier City Business Inc., their primary purpose is just to ensure that Napier CBD is a desirable place for people to work, live and play. So with the membership of Napier City Business Inc., they don't collect direct memberships, but rather receive funding through general rates, which is a fixed amount, as well as a CBD promotional levy. So over the last several years, as some of their activities have grown, they've drawn on their own reserves to fund the cost of these things, but they're at a point now where they need to, or that they're looking to increase the amount of funding from their members. So the normal process for this would be for the council to go out and perform, go through consultation with the affected parties. That's namely about 430 business and ratepayers within the CBD. However, in this instance, what's actually happened is the Napier City Business Inc. Have put together a consultation process which started around about October, will go for a few more months. So that will include things such as some targeted emails out to the businesses and ratepayers, some mail outs to parties that don't have email contact for, information evenings and workshops, some face-to-face meetings as required with some of the constituents, and also a special general meeting and presentation to vote, of which they've got some set rules. Now, as I was saying before, the normal process would be for the council to go out and do a lot of that consultation, but given that they've got a fairly thorough process in place, a recommendation is to adopt their process as a consultation process, so to effectively approve that. I think it would save on quite a bit of the resource of the council to do that.
Thank you, Gary. One question I have is that there is a requirement that at least 75% of the members must be present at the special general meeting to actually vote on this. Is there a high risk that they won't get that many members along? Having been through this process with the Taradale Marketing Association, which didn't have a requirement like that, did it?
No, madam, I don't think we did, and we ran our own consultation process, and it was quite painless, unexpectedly painless and successful.
Yes.
So it was who turned up on the night. I think we had a quorum, but it wasn't 75%.
Which obviously this will be part of their constitution, that and I guess
Yes.
just highlighting that, is there a risk around not having enough members present to actually being able to vote on this?
Am I able to answer that
Yes, sorry, you're welcome to. Yes. Yep.
The rules or the constitution state that it's 75% of the members present at the meeting that have to
okay.
authorise it. The quorum for our meetings, I believe, is around 15.
Okay, so that this just is the wording of the paper
Yeah,
doesn't
sorry.
quite represent that. So that's good
Yeah,
to
so
know.
75% of those in the room voting.
Okay, excellent. I was just concerned about attracting 320
Yeah, no, that would be difficult.
Thank you for that clarification. And yes, I mean, I think that you've put together a very robust consultation process as a business owner who sits within this CBD. I've seen it come through our business, so there is the awareness there. So did any councillors have questions of Gary or Zoe, since we've now have you at the table? Deputy Mayor Brosnan?
Hi guys. Just a couple of questions. The full consultation plan, I see a summary of it on, I think it's page 158 of our agendas, where it talks about the detailed emails, etc., and bullet points, that process you're going through. Is there a guarantee that all members will have communication from you over this? I'm just thinking. I guess I can't 100% guarantee. I probably should have put in the letter prior that in September last year, we did a full database review with an independent company. So we had SIL Research come in and go through both our membership database and our ratepayer database and contact every single person on there and get updated contact details and how they wanted to be communicated with. And that's what we've used as our tool for communicating with them going forward. Yeah, perfect. That's best practice. And oh, sorry. The only other thing, you mentioned, Gary, we usually run this process in terms of the consultation.
Yes.
Do we, as council, because obviously we're the collector of the rate if it's successful, do we have oversight in the voting process, or what is the I suppose the security around that process?
That would be feedback from Napier City Business Inc. Although what we could do is have representation at the meeting.
Would that be normal?
Well, this is something that doesn't happen very often as such with this process, and so I couldn't really say it's
Sorry, both sides are telling me that we have a representative, obviously, on the... Sally is our and so that would be normal that we would have our elected representative there, but also someone from staff, or I'm just trying to get a gauge of what is normal.
Well, the thing is that we can have somebody there from staff as required, but yeah. So if that would provided some additional comfort, then we can certainly do that.
No, thank you.
That's all right.
Am I correct that you tried this a while ago, but you tried to extend the boundary?
That's
And
prior to my tenure, but yes,
And
Meg,
so that's why it failed, I think, because of the extended boundary.
probably
wasn't it?
there's a few reasons around the
Yeah.
process and things like that, but
But you're not trying to extend the...
no,
boundary.
this is within our current membership base.
Okay, thank you.
So last time that was conducted was back in 2008, and that was done by the council as well. That was driven primarily by us. Yeah.
Councillor Tapney?
This may sound like a, kia ora, Zoe. This may sound like a bit of a brash question, but I'm looking for some confidence, and it's really an extension from my point of view on Deputy Mayor Brosnan's queries around council input or staff input to provide. What I'm looking for is a level of confidence in that process and its outcome. Because I'm conscious in my mind that if we're asking the Napier Business Institute or Association to conduct an activity around business activities within a closed market group, it's a bit like asking the burglar to look after their house while you're on holiday. So I'm just looking for probably a bad analogy, but what I'm saying is I probably wouldn't ask the agents, in my perspective, I probably wouldn't ask the agency who potentially would lead this to conduct the survey. Just for a little bit of confidence and balance in the result. So is there anything you can provide verbally that might provide me with some confidence that, because it doesn't happen very often, so again, the fact that it doesn't happen very often for me would indicate that something council would want to make sure they have a presence in and participate in. But I didn't immediately pick that up from the proposal. So I'm just...
We have been in discussions with council for many months. Prior to Gary, I was talking with Ross Franklin simply because there was no set process about this, how this happened. I believe Taradale Marketing Association went for a levy increase a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and their process was different to our. They ran it, but they had a meeting and it passed and it went through. Like they haven't had to go through this process with council that we are trying to do. We're trying to do it as fairly as possible, but as there's no sort of process set at the moment, we're kind of
Drawing the start line as you go.
yeah, a little bit.
Yep, no worries. Thank you for that.
So would it assist though, perhaps, if there was some additional oversight over the process?
What was that?
Would it assist then if there's some additional oversight over the process being conducted by Napier City Business Inc?
Based on Taradale's experience, which from Councillor Wright's comments that it was a very successful engagement with the community there, I anticipate it'll be exactly the same because the business network does a fantastic job in our CBD. So really it's about protecting the integrity of the result. So if there is an opportunity for our team to participate even in an observational manner, that lends credibility to the end result, and it's really about ensuring that we don't undermine the work that's already been started from a good premise.
No further questions, so I'll ask for someone to move the motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Did you wish to speak to the motion?
I just wish you every success. I know when Taradale was successful in raising their levy, it really changed the game out there and we were able to do so much more for the community.
Thank you. Did anyone else wish to speak to the motion? No? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you very much. Gary. So we now are at actions from previous minutes. And the action table of a course and
It's grabbing Hayley.
oh, I didn't even see you go.
She had an interest, did she?
Dan's the chair. Yeah.
I sort of shooed off. I thought the
Yeah.
baby missed me out.
She did mention it at the beginning.
Yeah.
We have got lunch out there, but since we're nearly at the end, we'll keep on going.
Oh, not you, Haley. Not you.
So we're actions from previous minutes, and the action table here gives us an update on current actions we have from previous meetings. Did anyone have any specific questions or queries with regards to any of the actions listed?
Yes,
Councillor Bowden.
the first one about Sean Bevan, I just wondered what parameters there are around that invitation to talk regional awards stats, because I mean I'd be interested in the well-beings in particular, but it's a very broad discussion here, definition. I just wondered if there was a little bit more clarity as to, obviously somebody's going to ask Sean to come in and speak about something specific, and I just wondered how that's going to be defined, if we could have any input into it.
I would certainly see that we could have some input into defining exactly what he's going to come and present to us on. So I see that, you know, yeah. So there's no terms of reference or anything being.
And who does
sits
one's-
with city strategy in terms of the directorate.
Is that you,
So that Richard's team
Richard?
and
Cool.
Annette. So yeah, a few feed into Annette.
Yeah.
Great. And just a process query from me. As actions are completed, once they're reported and here is completed, they'll then be removed from the table?
Yes, so you'll
Right.
see them once and then they'll go.
Great, thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, can I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Brosnan, Councillor Tapani, seconder. Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. We now come to reports under delegated authority. Tenders let. We do not have any tenders let. Are we still required to put that as a motion when there's no tenders
Just
to,
to note that.
just
there
to
were,
note. We will do them we'll do them together. So 2 documents executed under seal. Again, there were no documents executed under seal. And 3 is the resource consents report. Did anyone have any question of council officers with regards to the resource consents report? No? Very good. Do I have a, thank you, councillor Taylor.
I'll move 1, 2 and 3.
Thank you very much. Seconded by councillor Tapani. Thank you. And if there's no desire to talk to the motion, I will put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And I'll just have the move into PX, a mover and seconder for that, please. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Thank you, Councillor Bogue. And we will just adjourn for a quick bite to eat and back at 1 p.m. for public excluded. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.